and welcome back to Health Assured's Peace of Mind podcast. My name is Sofia Feghali and I'm one of the lead counsellors at Health Assured. In our topic for this month, we're going to be looking at how you can start the year off with more resilience. Having resilience is a really important skill that you can adopt, and if you're wanting to improve yourself in any area of your life, or if you've just gone through a particularly difficult time, having more resilience is something that can really help you to move forward with your mental health. So to go further into this topic with me today, to understand more about resilience, why it's important, and of course looking at things that you can do to have to come into a better mindset, I'm really happy to be here with Amy Hyman. So Amy has been on the podcast a few times, but maybe if someone hasn't seen one of your clips with us just yet, do you want to just introduce yourself a bit more, Amy, and about your work as a counsellor, and I guess what made you want to come in and talk about this with me today?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Amy. I've been at Health Assured for almost 4 years. I'm one of the Wellbeing counsellors and I work on the helpline. And a lot of the work that we do, I feel if people's resilience was improved or they had more awareness on resilience and the importance of resilience, it's really helpful for that solution-focused approach that we adopt with the goals, helping people to create the goals and kind of reaching them where they want to be. And I think just being able to help support people with advice and guidance and some hints and tips, I think resilience is really, really important in everyday life, especially with lots of financial struggles in the world at the moment and lots of things that are going on. It's a really tough time. It can always be a really difficult time at the start of a new year as well. I think it'd be nice for us to have a chat, and hopefully people will be able to take some positives from today's podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I think people really will take a lot of positives, because I think we know how hard it can be to just manage your mental health. Yeah. Working as counsellors as we do, and I think being able to come in with a strong sense of resilience, having the traits of a resilience person, can really help you move forward with any sort of mental health difficulties that you might be going through. And I guess to start off with, because people might have differing definitions exactly of what it might be, I think we can maybe just start off by just explaining a little bit more about what resilience actually is. So, I always see resilience as, how you go through difficult times. So when any sort of adversity or difficult time comes, how do you get back up from that?
Yeah.
And I guess with all the different people that you've worked with, Amy, have you seen resilience in different sections? People can show resilience in different areas of their life?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. My interpretation of resilience as well is similar to yours. And for me, resilience is about your ability to bounce back. So say, for example, you have a bad day that could turn into a bad week, and we get lots of people on the helpline that have long-term struggles, and they just find themselves in a really difficult place where it's really hard to get out from. It's having that ability, that knowledge, those tools and techniques to help you to kind of bounce back more quickly. And so it's the ability to, when you said, when you're faced with adversity or difficulties, unexpected curveballs in life, how we go through those and how we can stay on track. And I think you're right when you asked the question there about having the ability to be resilient in different areas of your life, because there's actually 4 different types of resilience, and there's social, emotional, mental and physical. And I think it would be really good today if we kind of touched upon those a little bit, those 4 different ones, because, for example, somebody might have lots of resilience at work. However, they might really struggle in their personal life and not feel as resilient. They might be 2 different people when they go to work as to when they come home. There might be areas of your life where you do have a lot of resilience or some resilience, but in others that you don't.
Mm-hmm, exactly, and I'm really glad that you've mentioned that, because like you said, it can be really different for everyone, and I suppose what we're aiming towards is to have balance in all those different areas. And you mentioned the different types of resilience that we have. And can you break those down a little bit, the different types of ones?
Yeah, so firstly, there's the mental. Mm-hmm. So let's not confuse mental and emotional resilience. So the mental is the ability to bounce back more quickly. And it's about being able to solve problems and move forward, remaining hopeful and coming up against setbacks.
Yeah.
So that's the mental. But when we look at the emotional, that's the responses like to stress, unexpected situations, having that emotional awareness, understanding what emotions are going on for us, like the triggers, self-regulation, healthy coping techniques and that sort of thing. So there is a difference between mental and emotional. And if somebody wants to look at those a little bit further and look at the differences, there is some really simplified versions available on Google to have a look at as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose as well, I think it's important to mention as well that it can be different for different types of individuals. So I think sometimes when we hear the word resilience, I don't know about you, but, you might think about a high-performing athlete, needing that, or you might think of mental toughness and going to the gym and getting ripped or whatever that might be. But, it can be applicable to everyone. Everyone needs resilience because everyone has their own difficulties that they're going through. So it could be, the student that's just trying to be resilient to get through their exams and, working a part-time job. It could be the single mother that's got 3 kids and, she's just trying to, make ends meet. So they might be able to have a different variety of those different types of resilience, and it can look different for everyone depending on their own personal challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And going back to the example you used then about physical wellness, going to the physical resilience, it's really, really important that we have physical resilience, because I think when we look at resilience, people automatically just attach it to mental health or emotional well-being.
Yeah.
But for me, I think physical resilience is really, really important, because if we don't eat well, we don't sleep well, we don't look after our physical health, if we don't have a good diet, then when you're physically overwhelmed, that can then create emotional overwhelmness as well, especially if you're not sleeping very well and you're not getting the right amount of rest. If you're in stressful situations, I think they kind of go hand in hand at times as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I always think it's really good advice to say if someone is struggling with your mental health, it's good to look at the basics.
Yeah.
So are you eating healthy? Are you getting a bit of exercise every day? Are you drinking enough water every day?
Are you getting enough sleep?
Yeah, and how are you? Are you being social? Are you reaching out to your support network? And I'm not saying that those 5 things are going to heal you completely, but they might actually, depending on what you need, they might give you that clarity and peace of mind to move forward. But I think it can always be a really good place to start. And
yeah, I completely agree, because with that physical wellness or the physical resilience, if you're feeling run down and tired, even your ability to focus on a task or to have the energy or headspace to be able to process how you feel. So if you're not feeling well physically, or you haven't got that physical resilience, then that will impact on your ability to have that emotional or mental or even social. If you feel tired and fatigued and overwhelmed, that's going to mean you're not going to want to go out maybe.
Yeah.
So I think those 3 that we've already mentioned really kind of then tie into that social resilience as well that I've mentioned at the start.
Exactly, and I think it's really showing that you have to have that balance in all areas of your life, which is good why you've mentioned the different types of resilience, because you can sort of check in on yourself. You might be sitting there I've got a really good support network, my social resilience is very strong, but physically, I don't really exercise, I haven't been going to the gym as much, I don't do as much every single day, and then maybe that can help you to determine a little bit more about those areas to focus on a bit more.
And we were having a bit of a discussion earlier, wasn't we, on about how it does kind of all tie in together when we look at low mood or depression. Having good resilience can really help overcome if you are struggling with low mood, or you've got depression or suffered with depression in the past. If something happens in life that's unexpected, having that ability to bounce back, because if you recognise that you have had a history of depression or low mood, what you don't want to do if you come up against a difficult, challenging situation is kind of it be a bigger setback for you as well.
Yeah, definitely, because we were talking a bit before about, why is resilience important? Yeah. Why is it important? And we were saying because these things are going to happen in life, unfortunately, this is what life is full of. Unexpected challenges that might come up. Maybe you've just lost someone unexpectedly, or you've become sick all of a sudden. You've left your job. I think we can all probably relate that difficult times happen, so being able to work through them is important. And like you were saying then, Amy, when you have a history of mental illness, if you've struggled with stress or anxiety, not having the resilience can make those symptoms a lot worse.
Yeah, definitely. And there's going to be sometimes in life experiences where resilience is going to feel extremely difficult. For example, a bereavement and a loss. Bereavement, losing somebody, a loved one. This is where the social resilience for me would be most important. The physical, obviously, as well, making sure you're eating and sleeping, looking after your well-being, but that social, those connections. Some people are very fortunate that they have a big family, lots of friends and family. Some people out there that are listening to this might have limited, but it's making sure as well, where possible, that you keep in contact with your social connections. When we talk on the helpline, when we work from that solution-focused approach, we do ask about support network, what's around you already. I think sometimes we lose sight of what's around us, don't we, and things that we can reach out for and look for. But yeah, it's about kind of feeling a sense of belonging, like somebody cares. It can be quite isolating and lonely if we feel like somebody doesn't care. So for me, that social aspect is really important, that social resilience, because that might be the only resilience at that moment in time that's going to help with a loss or bereavement, because some people might be taking time out of work or stopping their usual daily activities. So the other areas of resilience that we've looked at already, the social might be the main important one in that.
Yeah, and I suppose it's depending on the situation that you've been through. So like you said, I think if someone's gone through a loss, making sure that you're prioritising socially, your social, reaching out to your support network is important. I think especially after a breakup as well, it's really important to reach out to your support network. Yeah. I think any times where you've lost someone, whether that be from a bereavement or just from a loss of friendship or
family member, disagreements, yeah, definitely.
Exactly, so it can definitely depend based on those different ones. And I really wanted to touch on the point a bit about toxic resilience as well. Which people might not be as familiar with, but I've got the definition. But toxic resilience is basically the drive for when we want to be strong and stoic, and it actually starts to detriment our mental health.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to mention because, sometimes I think people can hear that word resilience and automatically think, okay, I'm just going to keep going through life. I'm just going to go. And that's not actually what resilience is. It's not about pushing down your emotions and repressing them, not giving yourself time to process it. It's about, even when those difficult times do come up, not going over them, but working through them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that quite a few times with people. Sometimes they'll just go through some sort of incident or they'll be ignoring a lot of things. And on the surface, it looks like they're coping and that they're resilient. But, on the inside, they're really struggling.
Yeah, and we touched a bit upon this as well, didn't we? And I used the example of, say, for example, at work, toxic resilience. So having that fear of failing, if it's a stressful environment, you're pushing your body to keep going and going, trying to complete tasks, if you're juggling lots of tasks, if it's to a detriment of your personal life, you're doing lots at home. Toxic resilience, if it's because of the consequences of not doing that, you might be in a workplace where you can't afford to say, oh, I can't manage that or I can't do that. So that's then taps into our personal boundaries and then we can become people pleasers because of that as well. And ultimately, I get a lot of calls on the helpline, ultimately people end up in burnout and then they end up out of work. And because they're trying to push, they're trying to be strong or be perfect. In transactional analysis, it's really interesting. You can look at it on Google. Really simple model. It's called injunctions and drivers. And your drivers are like be strong, be perfect. And if you've got those types of values or thoughts or pressures you put upon yourself, that can be really detrimental and create toxic resilience as well, because you're trying to be resilient in a toxic, negative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not true resilience. And so those values that you said, if you have certain values of I have to be perfect, I can't make mistakes, otherwise I'm not strong, beliefs. Then those beliefs are going to really impact how you're going to move forward with those difficult times.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's like a big one, and that's why I think it's important. I feel like when you've gone through any sort of difficult or painful experience, I think there's so much importance in being able to process your emotions instead of zooming past them or trying not to acknowledge them. Because I've worked with a lot of clients as well that have, they've gone through quite a lot of difficult traumas, one after the other. And then, they're like, so then this happened and then this happened. And you can tell as they're saying it, they don't even have time to breathe. They haven't even had time to process the things in between. And then they get to that point where, oh my God, so much has happened and I feel so overwhelmed with these emotions because they didn't have that time to really process things in between it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously on the helpline with Solution Focused Therapy, we do acknowledge historical events and the past because that's really important because it helps us understand why people might be feeling the way they are, the way that they might function the way they are. But yeah, if somebody has had a difficult childhood and they didn't have a secure attachment or like a safe home environment, I think that's really difficult to then have like that resilience in adulthood or to have it naturally. So sometimes people need to take a step back out of a situation, take time away from work to build that self-awareness, understand themselves, their triggers, their responses, then in order to be able to put things in place for themselves that they know that work and that are quite positive. And sometimes people haven't had the opportunity to have that self-awareness or have a space to make sense of why they might feel the way they do or respond the way that they do. So it's just unfortunate sometimes that people haven't had those opportunities, but I guess podcasts like this and these discussions, it's going to help educate people and give people a bit of food for thought and in things that they can do for themselves if they can't afford therapy or access structured support for that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's knowing as well of it can help to have that psychoeducation explanation as to why things might be feeling like that. And it's because, a lot's happened and things have been building up.
And what's really important in that, what I like there, is it's that validation. Just to, when you read something or you hear something and you identify with it and you think, oh wow, yeah, I really get that, or I recognise that within myself. It's validating how you feel, and it feels more real and more common. Because if you don't have, going back to that social resilience, if you don't have a good social network or like close connections and you don't really have anybody to unpack things with or talk to, because nobody identifies with how you're feeling, you can feel quite isolated and wonder whether, am I crazy or am I the only person? And it's sometimes more common than we actually realise.
Yeah, that's why I think validation is so important. It really helps you to feel understood and not alone with how you feel. Because sometimes we will feel something and we'll almost make ourselves feel bad for feeling that thing. We'll feel a lot of guilt, maybe about thinking, oh no, I shouldn't be feeling like this and I shouldn't be feeling like that. But, when you talk to, your support network or even a therapist or a professional or just a good listener, that helps to validate those feelings. It can make you feel instantly better. And it almost helps you move forward in a way. If you've ever talked to someone and they validated your feelings, you can almost feel yourself moving forward from there.
Because what it also stops as well is overthinking and overanalyzing. So if you do feel validated, you think, oh, okay, it's more common than I think, or someone shares a similar experience. That might stop someone then from overthinking. And it's quite time consuming, isn't it? If somebody's got anxiety or they're going through a difficult situation, catastrophizing, overthinking, creating negative scenarios, and that can have an impact and be negative on somebody's resilience, because it might put a fear in place for them wanting to do something or take action or approach something in a certain way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've really mentioned there just about the importance of having a really supportive support group in building resilience. Because I think nowadays sometimes, I think especially if you're in more of an individualistic culture, I also think since the pandemic and just social media as well, it's caused people to really isolate in themselves or feel like, I'm a lone ranger, I can do this on my own. Maybe not everyone feels that way, but I think there's been a lot more people have felt isolated, and I think that's doing a lot more detriment because we need other people to help. We need,
about human to human interaction, and sometimes on the helpline I will sometimes say is there anybody that you can call? So if I ask about support network, and geographically they're not around their family, but they're still close in terms of love and connection, and they'll say, oh, I can send a text. And then I always throw in there and say, well, how would it feel to do a video call or to ring and verbally speak to somebody rather than messaging? And I'm really kind of tightening up that social part and that social resilience, because to hear somebody's voice and to have feedback rather than just like a message and a check-in, that can be quite short-lived, that contact with just a few messages coming back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. It's always best to talk to someone. I think that's like that's the closest way that we can feel to someone. And, I'm glad that you've mentioned that, just about how important, that reaching out for support isn't a weakness, it's a strength, being able to do that. And I guess in terms of like other areas of resilience, Amy, like with the people that you've worked with or just from your knowledge as a mental health counsellor, what other sort of traits would you say a resilient person has?
Okay, so for example, how they respond to stressful situations. I get people calling like that are having stress at work, and almost instantly one of the first things they say is they want to leave that job. It's quite recent stress, some of it as well, and it's kind of only just appeared. So we can go through life where we can kind of feel like we're plain sailing, and all of a sudden, if you imagine kind of sailing and then you drop off down a waterfall and it's all chaotic at the bottom, and then you come out the other side, some people might stay in that chaos at the bottom of the waterfall and not come back out onto calmer waters. It's how you respond to stress. So like taking a step back, observing the situation, putting things into perspective. A resilient person not making decisions fueled by emotions. Coming from a rational mindset and having really, really healthy coping techniques to help come to that rational mindset, like journaling or changing your environment in that moment, stepping out of the situation. It's being able to manage that stress or that experience or whatever it is going on for you in that moment in quite a positive or more healthy way.
Yeah, so you're able to tolerate those uncomfortable emotions, own and in kind of two ways. So the first way is sort of, so you can kind of, so you approach them in two different ways. So first of all, your outlook towards that emotion. So when something bad happens, rather than saying, oh God, everything's awful now, I'm just going to give up, this is too much, I feel overwhelmed, I'm going to quit my job. When a bad negative experience happens, you actually start by saying, okay, so that thing happened, what can I do next to move forward from it? It's not just falling at the first hurdle, it's having that positive mindset of, things are going to get better, this is just a minor setback, but what can I learn from it? How can I move forward from it? So I guess there's that first point there of, how you view that situation to be. And also the second one is you're able to cope with those negative emotions. So if you do feel a lot of anxiety, you actually have the coping methods to be able to manage them. You have that toolbox of things to move forward.
I really like that explanation there you've just provided, because the first one is referring back to that mental resilience, where I said it's about how we solve the problem, how we move forward, we remain hopeful. And then the emotional is looking at the stress, the responses, the self-regulation, the self-awareness, the emotional awareness in there. And so, that explanation you've just given ties into both mental and emotional resilience in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really is just about your outlook on life. And I think a lot of resilient people, they tend to have more of a positive attitude, towards life, or they're generally just more optimistic. They're like, okay, even though this happened, I still have hope that things are going to move forward. And I suppose, would you say a lot of it is also to do in the way that you talk to yourself? So let's having positive self-talk is really important.
Self-talk, it is. And if you have an inner critical voice, this is going to be really tough if you struggle with low self-esteem or your confidence isn't great, because sometimes that's your default. That inner critical voice, you'll tell yourself that you're not good enough, or that you can't do it, or that you don't have the ability to do something. So it's being able to rationalise your thoughts and look at what's going on externally as well as internally as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's about it's about being realistic about things. So let's say you make a mistake at work, for example, instead of going straight to that negative self-talk of, oh, you're rubbish at your job, you can't do this, just quit. It's being a bit realistic. It's saying, I have had a bit of an overwhelming week. Maybe my boundaries are a bit all over the place at the moment. I've taken on more work than I can, which is the reason why I felt overwhelmed. What can I do next to move forward so that this doesn't happen again? There's two very different ways you can talk to yourself.
Yeah, and the key thing that I liked there is the boundaries. If we have healthy boundaries, then our resilience will be better because we're not overcommitting, we're taking time for ourselves. It provides more structure to your day, more routine to your day. So if you're committing a certain amount of time to something or someone, if you overcommit, that's going to create stress for you. So yeah, I think boundaries are really important as well when it comes to being resilient.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really glad you've made that point about mentioning boundaries, because I think it's been a bit of a hot topic. I've heard more and more people, like mental health professionals, talking about it, but when I first initially heard about it a few years ago, I wasn't really sure what boundaries were, because it's not something they really teach you in school. Or they don't really teach you about resilience in school, or like how to overcome those difficult things. So, it's good that more people are sort of being more aware about it and looking at how to implement them. And, like what you said there about, when you really honour your boundaries, when you're able to say no, when you regularly check in with yourself, that's when you start to build more resilience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And ways in which you can kind of build upon that or look at your own boundaries is just simple things like journaling or like a thought record diary. So if there's been a point where you felt stressed or you've not wanted to do something, checking in with yourself and thinking, well, why did I say yes to that when I know I couldn't commit to it, or why did I overcommit? And yeah, it's going right back to basics. When we talked about that physical resilience at the start, when you get your basic needs met, like your sleep, your diet, exercise. So yeah, looking at your physical needs. If you don't feel that you have resilience, but you'd like to become more resilient, it's it sounds simple and basic, but it sets the foundation and helps you to build upon. So it's building your self-awareness, recognising what your triggers are. And when we look at triggers in that moment, it's not just looking at what's going on externally, it's turning it inwards and looking at I call it internal noise, like what emotion do I feel here and what thought is present? Am I responding in anger? Am I being irrational? Am I being patient? Am I being understanding? Am I taking enough time to make sense of what's going on? So yeah, it's about building your self-awareness, looking at your thoughts, your feelings, your responses. And when you become aware of you and learn more about yourself, that's when you can start to identify and recognise what changes you might want to make. You might try a different response or look for tools and techniques in order to break negative automatic responses that you've always done, because as human beings we can respond on autopilot and finding new ways of doing things. I've talked about this in a different podcast, but I really, really like the stop technique. So the stop technique is where we stop in that moment, we observe the situation, we stop, we take a step back, observe the situation, put things into perspective, so like your thoughts, your feelings, and practice what works for me in this moment, what are going to be the consequences of my response. But what's really important there is when we use the stop technique, that doesn't mean we're going to forget about it if it's not appropriate to respond in that moment. It might just mean, actually, I can't respond. I'm going to put a lid on it, but you can revisit it later on if you are doing journaling or reflective work. So that doesn't mean that we push it away and pretend that it didn't happen. But what it stops you from doing in that moment is responding in a negative way or making a choice that you might then regret. So there's lots of different ways out there in which you can start to build your resilience socially, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I guess, I really liked the example you gave there of the stop technique, and because I think it can stop you from acting emotionally in those moments, or kind of running onto like a negative thought or a negative thought pattern. And it kind of just reminds you of it's grounding yourself in that moment. It is bringing you back into the present moment. And I just wanted to make a quick point about, I think that's another way of building resilience, I suppose more in like the mental or the emotional mind, of practicing more mindfulness. I know that some people hate that word because it can be, I don't know, it's, what's my point here? Waffling.
Yeah, I think with mindfulness,
it can be a bit cringe.
and people are quite dismissive of it, I find. They'll be like, well, how's that going to help? How is breathing going to help? But actually, as humans, what we do is we spend most of our lives either thinking to the past, projecting ahead to the future, what am I going to have for lunch, what's going to happen tomorrow, and to actually bring yourself to the here and now, you're focusing on what's in your control. You're emptying your mind and your body, even if it's temporary, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, all that stress, all the chaos of life. And yeah, it's really grounding yourself and being calm, being rational. So yeah, I really get what you mean by that, about the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, and it helps you let go of the past as well.
It does.
You know, and I think sometimes people can really struggle with, you know, when something's happened, they really struggle to let go of it, especially if it's been something, you know, really difficult. And sometimes, you know, to do things, you do have to talk to a professional or just go to therapy or reach out to your support network or do those other things to help you move forward from it. But, you know, even practicing like 10, 15 minutes of mindfulness can help build that skill in your mind. It builds that muscle in your brain of learning to let go more and to be more in the present moment.
Present, and that if you struggle, say, to use the stop technique, because in the heat of the moment, your brain doesn't register and think, oh, I need to stop here and reflect. But by practicing mindfulness, because you're grounding yourself and stopping in that moment, you're kind of training yourself to not respond on autopilot or instantly in certain situations. And I know this podcast is on resilience, so I won't go too much into anxiety, but for me, when people that are struggling with anxiety, if they're catastrophizing or have anticipatory anxiety, and they create scenarios in their mind of how something's going to turn out or it's not going to be how they want it to be, that can impact somebody's resilience as well. So having the ability to break that thought process and take a step back out of it, because your thoughts just snowball. And if you start to convince yourself that it's not going to go your way or you can't do it or it is going to be a negative outcome, your resilience then will be kind of halted in that moment. And yeah, you'll be kind of stuck where you don't want to be. So mindfulness, again, can help even break like the thought cycles that we have in situations where we need to be resilient. Having that emotional resilience.
Yeah, and I think with resilience as well, it's very individual for everyone because everyone has their own certain things they might struggle with more than others. So someone might be struggling with stress, someone might be struggling with anxiety more. So it's about looking at the things in particular that you struggle with and how can I control and manage them. And, you know, like you were saying, if you struggle with overthinking in particular, and then you start to have those coping methods to help reframe your thoughts, grounding, things like that, that helps your resilience because you know, that was something that was holding you back or it was being detrimental to your health.
Yeah, definitely. And we've touched a little bit upon like the physical resilience, but having that as a coping technique, physical resilience, like exercise, I know some people might have health conditions or difficulties in life, like physically. So it's finding something that meets your needs. When it's for you. Yeah, like you might not be able to get out or you might not be very mobile, but you might be able to kind of do maybe a chair exercise or like yoga, something very light. So physical resilience also goes hand in hand with that emotional resilience and the mental resilience, because it's a positive coping technique, exercise and looking after your well-being. So they all really do kind of go hand in hand, don't they, all those four different areas?
Yeah, they really do. And I think that's why it's important to make sure that you're watering every single one of them and to make sure you're just checking in with those little bits. And then, you know, maybe you've listened to this and you didn't actually know that there were different types of resilience. And then you're sort of reflecting to yourself of, you know, what do those different areas look like for me?
Yeah, and I'm going to tie that back into the toxic resilience that we looked at, because raising your self-awareness, having better coping techniques, responding differently, that toxic resilience, then you'll be able to kind of tackle or recognise, and you might work on your boundaries or you might manage stress better. So again, being able to become more aware of self, that can prevent toxic resilience and help improve those different 4 areas of resilience that we've kind of looked at today as well.
Exactly, yeah. And I like what you said then. I think a big part of it, especially if you want to start looking into your resilience and how you can become more resilient, is looking at your 5 basics of mental health and also becoming more self-aware about, your triggers, about, when you start to feel that anxious or you start to feel a sort of impulse in the moment to do something, what was I thinking in that moment? What was I feeling? Was I doing something in particular? And I think, if you do it once, you might learn a lot, but I think it really helps if you keep checking in with yourself on those things, because you can start to notice a pattern.
That's a really important part of resilience. It's maintaining, so recognising what changes you need to make. Because you might go through lots of cycles in life where it feels really up and down, but it's really important that if you have a bad day, don't let that creep into a bad week and then allowing a bad week to creep into 2 weeks. But actually, at the end of those 2 weeks, it might have felt like a difficult time, but by journaling, checking in with self, you'll be able to pinpoint lots of positives, actually. You'll be able to see that actually the whole 2 weeks hasn't been really bad, haven't been really low. I have had some resilience during that time, and I've had a couple of good days, and then it wasn't a great day the day after. So it's recognising when you've picked back up and then kind of dropped back down again.
Yeah, I really like that point that you've made there, because it's about not being so hard on yourself and feeling like you have to do everything all at once. And I mean, I know that this new episode is coming up, starting the year off with resilience. And I think especially if you've set yourself any resolutions and feeling like you haven't done everything on your first week, it's okay to have those incremental steps, and sort of like stacking those habits. I always like the idea of just, improving yourself 1% more every day. And, you might look at those 2 weeks, like you were saying there, and feel like you haven't done anything. But if you've done one thing, if you've improved yourself 1% better every day, you're 14% better than you were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, it's I think, like we're saying, it takes time to really improve it, and it's okay to acknowledge that, the tortoise won the race.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I think it's important as well for people that are listening, because we've covered those 4 areas. I just want to throw out there, don't feel pressured that you have to have all of these 4 areas kind of together in a short period of time. You might just say, for example, if you feel quite isolated or you struggle with friendships, you might have social anxiety, you might want to focus on, for example, the social resilience, and you might be looking at a club that you might want to start or a hobby. And it's that fear of not knowing somebody that can hold us back. And when you're never going to make new connections or new friendships without coming out of your comfort zone and pushing yourself. So you can create very small goals for yourself, and it is important not to put too much pressure on yourself, because Rome wasn't built in a day, and resilience comes with life experiences, time, making changes, trying different things. And so, resilience isn't just going to appear overnight. It's having that ability to keep trying different things. And if you come up against a setback, then maybe trying something else or reflecting on why it didn't work. And it's, again, like you said, it's checking in with yourself and looking for a rationale or a reason why as well.
Exactly. That was really well said. And I think it's especially about having that positive mindset as much as you can, on positive and realistic mindset. If something goes wrong, not being so hard on yourself about it, and acknowledging the things that you have done is really important.
Simple things, again, building your resilience, like gratitude diaries. It's been proven to help you highlight the positives. 3 things that you were grateful for or proud of, or 3 things you noticed that changed. And if you wrote 3 every day in a book, after a week, you've got 21 things. And that can help build your resilience, because in those times, if you got that negative thought where it's telling you you're not good enough, or you feel stressed and you're not seeing any positives, it's reminding yourself. So you're building your resilience by reflecting back on your achievements and things that you recognise that you can do and that you are capable of.
Exactly, yeah. And like you said, when you put all those things together, you can see the bigger picture of things. And what would you say is really helpful of, the day-to-day wise of someone managing resilience? Would you say it's just doing those lifestyle changes, having the positive outlook on life, trying to be as optimistic as you can? Those are things that really help someone. and the whole.
Yeah, one thing that I do find I say a lot on the helpline is try not to think too far ahead. Obviously in life we do need to plan ahead for finances, holidays, but for like personal growth, we're all unique. There's no time scale. So it's trying to take it day by day, and then the days will turn into weeks. If we do try and project too far ahead, you're setting yourself up for failure there, because you're going to put too much pressure on yourself. You might set unrealistic goals and to be a certain place in a certain amount of time. So yeah, it's about just kind of taking it slowly, day by day, and being kind to yourself. If you do have a setback, this is what resilience is about, coming up against setbacks and how you get through them. And once you get out of the other side, feel proud of yourself and reflect on how you got there and what worked, what didn't work, what might I do next time in a similar situation. Yeah, so again, it's just checking in with yourself and recognising what you might want to let go, what you might want to implement, anything new you might want to try.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-reflection with that and a lot of self-awareness that comes with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like we said then it's just about, it takes time to develop these things and to come more into that mindset, but you know, I think consistency is so important. Even just doing a little bit every day, a little bit of journaling a day, a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of checking in.
Yeah.
You know, that can really help to build more awareness.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. I think you've given like really good understanding of resilience, the types of resilience that comes, and I think with that it really just shows like how important it is to really develop this in terms of how you move forward with your life. Those setbacks, there's literally two ways you can look at a setback. You know, you can either go down that path of you know, being negative about yourself, having that negative self-talk, or you can really move forward from it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you've given loads of like different traits in particular about how someone can move forward from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And I hope that if you are listening, that you have taken something away, and just remember just to take things one step at a time. And do you have any last words at all?
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. And I just always like to really reinforce the importance of self-care and looking after yourself. And if you do feel that you have failed at something or something that hasn't gone right, remind yourself of times where you have overcome, and that there's lots of positives about you as well, because your current life situation doesn't define who you are as a person as well. So lots of self-compassion, lots of patience and kindness for yourself as well.
Oh, thank you, Amy.